Skyscrapers, knives, and the dam all nerfed on today's patch. Let's take a look. All right, so we got our patch notes here, and it's a good one. It's a good one. I read through it just now, and there's a lot of good stuff. Some things that I didn't think that they would initially nerf. I thought that they might wait on it and see how things panned out after they nerf some of the bigger things. But beyond that, let's get started. So they mentioned here, thank you for joining us during the launch. And I have to say the launch was pretty smooth overall for NA. I do feel bad for all of you across the pond in EU that are you're playing but you can't earn rewards. It's terrible. Hopefully, and it's supposed to, hopefully today's patch does fix a lot of that. And they did mention that they're going to be giving all active closed beta accounts some compensational chests. So we will get some. I don't know how many. That's to be seen, but I guess we'll have to wait and find out. So let's get into it. So we have Skyscraper and Space Scraper scaling reduced and CDs increased. This was the big one. You basically could not play the game. If you didn't have a way to slow or freeze these guys right off the bat, you were dead within seconds, maybe even fraction of a second in some cases if they really got the CD reduction right. Stained glass window, which was a component of this build, now only doubles the value to the item of the right. It won't just double everything on the board. Which is another massive change, and we'll have to see how that implements and also adjusts some of the other pig builds that we've been seeing. Now here's another one from Vanessa. The other big offender was the dam. Now it no longer destroys large and medium items. I'm surprised that they did medium as well, but this is a massive change. Instead, it only destroys all small items and slows the medium items and leaves the large items completely unaffected. So that is a massive difference. Shipwreck now starts a diamond tier with +1 multicast, and robotics facility or factory now starts a diamond tier with only +1 on multicast as well. These are massive changes. I use Shipwreck on some of my poison builds with Vanessa. You can also use Shipwreck with other aquatic builds on Vanessa. And having it only be able to go up to +1 does bring the value of a lot of these builds down quite a bit. Same with Robotics Factory. I actually had a really crazy dually build. It was actually the only dually build that I was able to get to 10 wins on ranked. It was very hard because you always run into these Skyscraper and Vanessa builds that just instantly, you know, you can't play the game. But I was able to get one where basically I had a Pierre, and the Pierre conditioner would actually just freeze the whole board right away, and I got it to work with Robotics Factory, and it would multicast. So that was a big component of that. But I do think that dually stocks are on the rise. You're going to see a lot more dually players this patch because a lot of these major meta defining builds are basically nerfed. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Now this is another big one. Blunderbuss now charges instead of uses on burn. Now if you had the magma core, you were able to instantly cast your crit build. The blunderbuss would go off immediately. It would crit, all your knives would go off, and you couldn't play the game. So this is a big component of why this particular build was so powerful, because you could have it on cast. Basically, as soon as the game starts, you didn't let your opponent play the game. And then and along with that, the throwing knives now require different items crit for its force use trigger. So a lot of people were saying that, well, if you could remove the ability for it to crit off itself, then that also balances it out quite a bit more. So we'll have to see how this plays out. We'll have to see if people don't even play the throwing knife build anymore because of this, because that is a lot of its strength being nerfed right here. Now these we'll have to see, these upcoming ones. So we have the Globe enchantment timings updated and Vanessa's Amulet enchantment timings updated. We'll have to see how these play out. You're seeing them in some builds. Of course, the Amulet was one of the ways you could cause the throwing knives to crit. So we'll have to see how all these play out as well for other builds. Here's another big change that I did not expect because we weren't seeing dualies as much, but when you did see a dually, it often had a Momosaur, which was previously known as Dionysus here. But she can no longer fit large items in her mouth. That's a shame. That is a shame and a big problem to have. So we'll have to see. Now, the big difference here, though, if you notice, she can still destroy and fit the medium items in her mouth. whereas the dam does not destroy the medium items. So we'll have to see how this plays out. I know that item destroy and board destroy is a big, you know, people are not so keen to want to play against these things because it invalidates anything that you've built. You're basically not playing the game when your items are destroyed. So we'll have to see how this goes. Now, the docks no longer offers skills as rewards. This was a big change, and I was using this basically every time, especially in my aquatic builds with Vanessa. You could often just grab a clam, one clam, and just always go to the docks. Anytime it's on the board, you just select that, you get the tool skill, and oftentimes you get meta and you know, meta skills or just build defining skills from going to one event. And oftentimes you could get this 3 or 4 times, which would really heavily boost the effectiveness of your clam or any tool, really. So this is a major change. Now we have here adjusted some dually core skills to be less damage core specific. And I am excited to see a lot more dually builds now, because dually was actually the guy that I played the most when the game first came out, and not everyone had all these builds. I was just fooling around with a lot of his items, a lot of his cores, and he's such an interesting character because there's so many ways you can build him. There's so many different ways you can play because of how you have to interact with your core. So we'll have to see how this plays out, but I am excited to mess around with some of the new builds that we'll be able to see, and we'll actually be able to play now that all of these OP builds have been effectively nerfed. They also mention here many other various smaller fixes and adjustments. That's good to see. They don't really go into detail on this specifically, but we do have some general bug fixes here. And I'll kind of just go through some of these here. So one of the things that I noticed was a lot of items that should have worked from the stash, and this is a big component of the game right now, is that you can put things in your stash and still have effectiveness from the stash. Now, a lot of these things were not working from the stash. That has been apparently fixed. And you'll probably start to see a lot more builds being able to invest in items in the stash. One of the things that I like to do with Vanessa is just throw a core or one of those, the small aquatic item, the amber something, I forget what it's called exactly. You just throw it in there and it'll constantly build value as you buy and sell different items. So you'll start to see more of that, especially from Pig. I'm sure you're going to see a lot more of different things that you'll be able to build as a result of this. So that's great. A couple other ones here. One that I definitely saw was Radiant was not functioning correctly. If you had Radiant on some of the items, not all, but some, you would still have them be slowed, frozen, or destroyed. Now that is apparently fixed, so Radiant has become more powerful as a result. And we also have here stained glass window counted as a shield item. That would also impact some of the builds. Dam being counted as a freeze item. I didn't really see too many things that affected this in the combat portion of the build, but what you did notice is that when you had a anything that, like some of the scavenger rewards would highlight the dam, showing that they could improve the dam. When that wasn't the case, dam never comes with a innate freeze effect, so that's a big change. As far as just fixing the highlights on a lot of these items, you'll actually have some more clarity, which is great. And then some various other changes here. Here's a bug that a few of my friends had mentioned too. Anytime you chose the risky option after day 2, it was always uneventful. You could sometimes get it around day 2 or right before, I think, and something would happen, but most of the times it was uneventful, so there was no point in picking it. And then let's see here. This was another one that was making Skyscraper so powerful. Basically, it was increasing its own value in combat more than what was supposed to based off the value of the items that you had. So they fixed that as well. And some various other things. But I mean, overall, what a great patch. I feel like we're going to see a lot more dually builds. I'm excited for that. We're going to see a lot more other builds. We might see some more burn and poison builds as well. It'll be interesting to see if people can still get the throwing knife build to work. It'll still probably work on some kind of level, but now that it can't crit off itself, now that you can't instant cast it with magma core or any kind of burn effect, it'll be a lot different builds showing up. The big ones here for me, especially, I love the multicast builds. So we'll have to see how this actually affects that. But overall, really good changes. The patch comes out pretty soon, so we'll have to take a look and see how it goes. Now the hard part, we just got to wait for this patch to finish so we can play. But overall, I feel like it was a really good patch. Hats off to Tempo and everyone on the team for getting this out quickly. Hopefully the EU server side stuff gets fixed right away so you guys can start earning the rewards just like the rest of us. And yeah, I'm excited for the future. Hopefully we see a little more variety in the builds. But yeah, good stuff. And if you're interested, I'll be streaming more on twitch.tv/the_Choob. If you want to hang out with us, discuss the patch. Maybe you're pissed about Skyscraper not being viable anymore. Who knows? But anyways, thanks for watching.